All right. My name is Adam Armstrong, and my game is called KingSlayer: A Tale of Fatherhood and Regicide. And basically, the story is about a medieval peasant farmer who joins a group of red cloaked rebels in order to overthrow a tyrannical king and establish a democratic republic. It's a medieval. It's got sort of a medieval fantasy setting. Although maybe fantasy is not the right word, since I'm actually planning on having a realistic setting with like no magic and no fantasy creatures. So, but yeah, a medieval, I guess, fantasy, and it would be fantasy in the sense that it's purely fictional and has no direct ties to any actual historical events. So I guess maybe fictional medieval would be a better word than medieval fantasy, or a better term. Um, anyway, so the genre it would be third person 2.5D action role playing game ARPG. Graphic style I would like to do something similar to Octopath Traveler for those who've played that. And the gameplay I was wanting to do something similar to the indie game Crosscode, which is uh, an action RPG that was as an indie game released a few years ago, and the rating I'm aiming for would be rated M for mature. The audience breakdown, obviously, with an M rating, I would go for, uh, I guess, adults 18 and over who sort of want a blend of classic, modern, and retro games. So it's sort of a retro feel, but in a more more updated and modern technology. And I'm also planning on having very hardcore gameplay aimed at players who want a challenge. The way the gameplay loop would work is basically you'd explore the main map, uh, locate enemy castles or keeps or their enemy hideouts, and then you'd go inside the enemy hideout. Basically, do a dungeon crawl, eliminate all the enemies inside, and then you'd have conquered that particular hideout. And you just progress through all of the various castles and keeps throughout the game until you finally conquer the entire kingdom. The core actions would be obviously walking, running, jumping, attacking, strafing, dodging, rolling, backflip, blocking, and parrying. I was kind of actually thinking of having uh, pretty much all the same actions you could perform in Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. So, if that helps clarify anything. So, and your goals in the game basically your objectives is you find the enemy castles and defeat all the enemies inside, and then ultimately move on to bigger and bigger castles and like until you've conquered the entire kingdom. Like I said, so feedback that would be presented to the player, you'd have your auditory feedback, sound effects for hitting enemies and taking damage, visual feedback, I guess just visual effects for whatever actions you took, such as swinging your sword. Haptic feedback would be controller vibration for when you take damage or when you make contact with an enemy or when your sword makes contact with the enemy. Initially, I would release the game for PC at first with mouse and keyboard controls, and just because I think that would give a greater degree of, I guess, finesse over what you can do, and we can fine tune it for consoles later if needed. Anyway, the theme of the game would be you're fighting for freedom and taking a stand against tyranny. You're trying to bring down a corrupt monarchy and replace it with a democratic republic. And you're doing this in a fictional medieval setting. The game mood, like I said, realistic medieval, no no magic, no fantasy creatures, and I'm aiming for something very grim, dark, and brooding. And then I've got this plot summary here, or I guess introduction. So I'll just go ahead and read this. So, long ago, in an ancient and forgotten kingdom, there once lived a poor peasant farmer and his son. However, all was not well in the kingdom, for it was ruled by a greedy and tyrannical king who was driven mad by the gluttonous pursuit of wealth and power. Exerting unjust dominion over all the land, the evil king subjected his own people with murderous brutality, calling upon his most vicious royal lapdogs to do his bidding. Known only as the King's Men, this unholy order of knights had stripped themselves of all humanity and become soulless killing machines. By royal decree, the King's Men set about poisoning the land, burning crops, slaughtering farm animals, kidnapping children, and imposing upon the people the most despotic forms of usury and exploitation imaginable. As the oppression from the despotic king and his vile kingsmen intensified, the suffering of the people from economic hardship, internal strife, and political turmoil pushed the kingdom to the brink of civil war. Having been denied their rights to land, peace, and freedom, the people began to form organized fronts of resistance. Taking refuge in the forests and mountains, hiding out in caves and underground tunnels, these righteous freedom fighters began to plot the downfall of the monarchy so that it could be replaced with a democratic republic. But when the king's men launch a surprise attack against an unsuspecting village in an attempt to root out the rebels, all hell breaks loose, and in the ensuing chaos, the farmer's son is kidnapped by the king's men. Angered and determined to rescue his son, the farmer throws his lot in with the rebel cause, joining their ranks and becoming a leader of the rebellion. But in order to rescue his captured son, the farmer must first overcome legions of organized, well regimented henchmen and a vast array of cunning adversaries. Taking up the people's banner, he vows to bring about the destruction of not just the current monarchy, but of all monarchies now and forever, thus bringing freedom to the land. For the people, for freedom, for democracy, for our sons and our daughters, for our future. KingSlayer, a tale of fatherhood and regicide. Um, uh, so yeah, that's basically the plot of the game, or at least how it starts out. As for the user interface, I'm not. I'm still working on that. I don't really know what I'm going to do for the interface yet. The core mechanics, like I said, I want to have gameplay similar to the indie game Crosscode. If you've never played that, here's a YouTube video showing a battle real quick. So, what is outplay? Not that. This. So, come on. So, anyway, yeah, that's pretty much the combat system of Crosscode. I was wanting to do something similar to that for the gameplay. Level design. Here's just a layout of, I guess, the farmer's home village that gets destroyed. It's pretty simple so at this point, but that's that's I guess a level you could call it. As for the and the intended aesthetics or graphic style, Like I said earlier, I want the graphic style to be similar to Octopath Traveler from Square Enix. So, unlike Crosscode, which is purely 2D, I want to do something that's more 3D, 2.5D, I guess, like Octopath Traveler. So imagine the previous battle you just saw, but with graphics like this, like Octopath Traveler. It'd be like a combination of 3D environments, but with 2D sprites for the characters and pixel art textures, just so it kind of looks sort of like a Super Nintendo game, but in 3D. And it's made using Unreal Engine 4 to take advantage of modern lighting and rendering technology. And development technology, Unreal Engine 4, obviously. Maya is the 3D editing software I'm personally most familiar with. And then I'd also need some kind of sprite editing software as well. There are various options on that front, and I haven't yet chosen a particular sprite editing software, but I'll look into that more and make a final decision when the time comes. All right. And that's pretty much it.